The story of the rise of Samsung is fascinating. One of the things they've done, though, is release a ton of phones. So this is just another phone release. They do, a major phone release probably every 6 months, in part because they know Apple's only going to do one once a year. And so they're sort of getting ahead of that by doing one every 6 months. But the rise of Samsung in terms of market share has been a really impressive thing. And these phones sort of symbolize that. And it's also interesting to look at how that's happened over time, over the last few years, that they have done so well using the Android operating system, but showing really strong growth.
Why has the S line, why has this line been done so well with consumers?
Well, what's interesting is that this Galaxy line, it really is the brand now. And the way that they have come to represent the best of what Android software can be. But the brand isn't Android. And the brand isn't Google's anymore. The brand is Samsung's. And so while Android has gained in smartphone market share as well, it's really with Samsung's products. And one wonders how, one of the things I'm going to be looking for tonight is how much Google will be in this phone. Google spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing these phones, this software for Samsung to make all these profits with the hopes of the search over to Google.
Google has Motorola, and you wonder what,
Well, clearly, their
show me the money on Motorola.
Their strategy is not to make Motorola phones. That's sort of not the strategy that they've articulated about Android. The strategy is to make Android software and let lots of phone makers make it, and then let that drive search and drive usage of Google products. The question is, will Samsung customize the software so much that it's not driving search to Google, that it's not using Google Maps, and that the advantage isn't to Google, the advantage is to Samsung?
Well, picking up on brand, one of the things that's getting a lot of attention is the advertising blitz and all the money that Samsung is putting into this launch, a $400 million budget. And, on that note, they're saying, look, Samsung is basically taking a page of what Apple used to do. So remember how Apple used to mock the Windows in like all other commercials of the Mac guy versus the Windows guy? Samsung kind of doing the same thing with their ad, making fun of all those people who wait in line outside for those Apple product launches. So very aggressively targeting that tech elite. That's what a lot of ad insiders are telling me is very interesting about this launch.
And that just sort of goes to, the point, which is that, yes, Samsung may be releasing phones, more often than Apple, but, they're really starting to become more of an, the cult following is starting to become a little bit more Apple-like than it was maybe a year or two ago.
Well, it's interesting that, it shows you the lasting influence of Steve Jobs. Before Steve Jobs, CEOs didn't go on a stage and announce a product. And now, from Ford to Samsung, you've got executives doing product announcements on stage as if that's the right way to launch a product to consumers. But I think it just shows how much Steve really changed the business world.
It also shows how much Samsung is focused on the U.S., right? This is really one of the biggest launches in the U.S. This is Apple's home turf, and Samsung is going right after it.
Well, what's been interesting is that at the launch today, right, Cory, it's going to be the head of mobile for Samsung. It's a guy that we don't know very well. That the public doesn't know very well, but he's been the one launching these phones for them.
At Radio City Music Hall.
Yes.
I'm hoping I get to see the Rockettes, too. Can they do that still?
Well, if you can't see it there, it's also going to be webcast all over Times Square. Like, literally on all the screens, the presentation is going to be there.